The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched beyond what human eyes could properly see. Crystalline pillars reached toward a ceiling that seemed to fade into starlight itself. Around the massive circular platform, representatives from dozens of species sat in their designated areas. Some floated in energy fields, others rested in pools of liquid methane, and a few existed as pure thought patterns displayed on glowing screens. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the center of it all, feeling very small and very human. Her simple blue uniform looked plain next to the elaborate displays of the other delegates. The Vorthak representative wore armor that shifted colors like oil on water. The ethereal collective appeared as dancing lights that sang in harmonious frequencies. Even the insect-like hive queens managed to look regal in their chitinous crowns. "The species known as humans requests membership in our council," announced the speaker, a being so ancient that its voice seemed to come from the walls themselves. "They have demonstrated basic space travel and have made contact with 7 member species without causing major incidents." A sound that might have been laughter came from the draconic hegemony section. Their massive representative, scales gleaming like black metal, spoke in a voice that rumbled through the chamber. "These creatures have been in space for less than 2 centuries. We have records of wars among themselves that span millennia. They destroy their own planet for resources and fight over invisible lines on maps." Sarah felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her face neutral. The preparation briefings had warned her about this. Humanity was young by galactic standards. While other species measured their civilizations in millions of years, humans had only recently figured out how to leave their solar system without blowing themselves up. "The Zephyrian collective wishes to speak," came a voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The energy beings that represented one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy rarely spoke directly to newer species. When they did, everyone listened. "We have observed these humans for 53 of their years," the Zephyrian delegate continued. "They show unusual patterns. When threatened, they do not flee or submit. They adapt and overcome. When faced with impossible odds, they find solutions that should not work. They are unpredictable." The crystalline monarchy's representative chimed in with a sound like breaking glass. "Unpredictable is dangerous. Their emotional responses are extreme. They form bonds across species lines that interfere with rational decision-making. They take risks that sensible beings would never consider." "All of this is true," Sarah said, stepping forward. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber's perfect acoustics. "Humans are young. We are emotional. We make mistakes and we take risks. But we also keep our promises." The chamber fell silent. In galactic politics, promises were contracts. They were carefully worded documents with escape clauses and conditional statements. The idea of a simple promise seemed almost primitive. "Elaborate," the speaker commanded. Sarah took a deep breath. This was the moment her entire career had prepared her for. "If the Council grants humanity membership, even as the lowest level observers, we will swear an oath. Should any member of this Council face true extinction, humanity pledges its complete dedication to their preservation, regardless of the cost to ourselves." The silence stretched longer this time. Some delegates began chattering among themselves in frequencies humans couldn't hear. Others simply stared at the small woman standing alone in the center of the vast chamber. "You speak of extinction," said the Hive Queen, her voice a harmony of thousands of smaller voices. "Do you understand what this means? Species in this council number in the trillions. Their technologies span dimensions. Their territories cover entire galactic arms. What could your few billion humans possibly offer against threats that could endanger such civilizations?" Sarah looked directly at the insectoid queen. "Everything we have. Everything we are. Everything we could become." The draconic representative snorted, sending small flames dancing through the air. "Empty words. When the time comes, you will find excuses. All species do when faced with true sacrifice." "Dragons are wise in many things," Sarah replied carefully. "But you don't understand humans very well yet. When we make a promise, we keep it. When we say we'll die for something, we mean it literally." More discussion erupted around the chamber. The ethereal collective's lights pulsed rapidly, indicating intense debate. The Aquatic Federation's representatives created elaborate bubble patterns that served as their form of written communication. Even the normally silent machine consciousness began transmitting data streams that other artificial intelligences could interpret. "This oath you propose," the speaker said eventually, "it would be recorded in the sacred archives. It would become part of the fundamental laws that govern council membership. There would be no withdrawal, no renegotiation, no escape clauses. We understand, Sarah said simply. And you believe your species would honor such a commitment, even if it meant the destruction of your entire civilization? Sarah thought about the history lessons she'd learned as a child. Humans who had charged into machine gun fire for their friends. Humans who had walked into burning buildings to save strangers. Humans who had given their lives for ideas, for principles, for people they'd never met. Yes, she said, we would. The vote took 3 standard days. During that time, Sarah remained in her assigned quarters, reviewing everything she knew about each council species. She studied their histories, their technologies, their cultures. If humanity was going to be part of this community, she wanted to understand what they were promising to protect. On the final day, she was called back to the chamber. The same delegates sat in their same positions, but somehow the atmosphere felt different. Less hostile, though still cautious. The council has reached a decision, the speaker announced. By a margin of 67 to 31 with 8 abstentions, humanity is granted observer status in the Galactic Council. Your oath has been recorded in the sacred archives, though many believe it to be overly optimistic. The Zephyrian delegate spoke again. We voted in favor of your admission, though we hope your oath will never be tested. The galaxy has known peace for 2 million years. The threats that could truly endanger council species are theoretical now. Sarah bowed formally to each section of the chamber. On behalf of humanity, we thank the council for this opportunity. We hope to prove worthy of your trust. As she prepared to leave, the draconic representative called out to her. Human ambassador, your people's reputation for warfare precedes you. Perhaps that is why your oath seems more credible than it should. But warfare and sacrifice are different things. Do not confuse the ability to destroy with the willingness to give. Sarah turned back to face the massive dragon. With respect, I think you'll find that humans don't see much difference between the two. When we fight, we're always willing to give everything. The only question is usually what we're fighting for. The journey home took several weeks. During that time, Sarah drafted her report to Earth's united government. She tried to capture not just the facts of what had happened, but the feeling of standing in that ancient chamber surrounded by civilizations older than human written history. Her final paragraph read, The Council accepted our oath, though they clearly don't believe we could honor it if tested. They see us as young, emotional, and reckless. They're not wrong about any of those things, but they also don't understand that those traits aren't weaknesses in humans. They're exactly what makes our promise real. When the time comes, and I pray it never does, they'll learn what it means when humans give their word. The report was filed in Earth's archives, along with thousands of other diplomatic documents. Most people never read it. The oath itself became a footnote in history books, mentioned briefly in chapters about humanity's admission to the galactic community. But in the sacred archives of the Galactic Council, the oath remained, waiting. Recorded in crystal matrices that would last until the stars burned out, preserved in quantum storage that existed outside normal space-time. The words were simple. Should any member of this council face extinction, humanity pledges its complete dedication to their preservation, regardless of cost. The galaxy moved on, and the oath was largely forgotten, but it was still there. 300 years had passed since Ambassador Chen spoke her oath in the Great Chamber. The galaxy had changed in many ways, but mostly it had stayed peaceful. Trade routes connected distant stars. Cultural exchanges happened regularly, and the Council had grown to include 47 different species. Humanity had found its place among them, not as conquerors or heroes, but as reliable partners. Human merchants could be found in markets across 12 galactic arms. Human diplomats helped resolve minor disputes with patience and creativity. Human scientists contributed steady, if unspectacular, research to the collective knowledge of the Council. They were good at making friends. The Aquatic Federation enjoyed human music. Apparently, human vocal cords could produce sounds that reminded them of their home ocean songs. The Crystalline Monarchy appreciated human art, especially sculptures that played with light in ways their own crystal-based vision found beautiful. Even the proud draconic hegemony had come to respect human persistence in negotiations, but humans were no longer seen as the dangerous unknowns they once were. The oath in the sacred archives had become something scholars mentioned in footnotes about early council expansion. Most species had simply forgotten about it entirely. Captain Marcus Webb certainly wasn't thinking about ancient promises as he guided his cargo ship through the Outer Rim territories. He was delivering farming equipment to a herbivore collective colony and thinking about whether he'd have time to stop at the famous Crystal Gardens on Nexus Prime before heading home. His peaceful thoughts were interrupted by an emergency. Transmission on all council frequencies. "This is Zephyrian Research Station Alpha 7, came a voice that sounded like wind through empty spaces. "We are detecting massive spatial distortions in the void region. The phenomenon appears to be moving and expanding. We request immediate assistance from any council vessels in the area." Marcus checked his navigation charts. The void region was a patch of empty space between galactic arms where nothing much happened. He was only 3 days away, practically next door by galactic standards. He changed course immediately. When he arrived at the research station, what he saw made no sense. Space itself seemed to be wrong. Areas of absolute darkness moved through the starfield, and wherever they passed, things simply stopped existing. Not destroyed or burned or broken, just gone, as if they had never been there at all. "It's consuming matter at the quantum level," explained Dr. Zenthara, the lead Zephyrian researcher. Her energy form flickered with patterns that Marcus had learned to recognize as deep concern. "We've lost 3 probe ships already. They didn't explode or get crushed. They just ceased. What's causing it?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. "We're calling it a null cascade. Our best theory is that it's a breakdown in the fundamental forces that hold reality together. But that should be impossible. The universe has safeguards against this kind of thing." Over the following weeks, the situation got worse. Much worse. The null cascade wasn't just consuming matter. It was specifically targeting energy-based life forms. The Zephyrians, beings of pure organized energy, were its preferred victims. Colony after colony went dark. The Zephyrian collective, which had existed since before most species had evolved beyond single-celled organisms, watched helplessly as their people were erased from existence. Their technology, advanced beyond what most council species could comprehend, proved useless against something that attacked the very concept of organized energy. The council called emergency sessions. Scientists from dozens of species worked around the clock. Military forces were mobilized, though no one was sure what to fight. But the cascade kept growing, kept consuming, kept specifically hunting down every Zephyrian it could find. Marcus found himself assigned to refugee transport duty. He helped evacuate Zephyrian settlements ahead of the cascade's path, watching ancient beings who had witnessed the birth and death of stars flee in terror from something they couldn't understand or fight. "How many are left?" he asked Dr. Zenthara during one particularly difficult evacuation. Her light form dimmed to almost nothing. 18 billion, down from nearly 300 billion. "The cascade is accelerating. Our calculations suggest that at the current rate, the last Zephyrian will cease to exist in approximately 4 standard months." The weight of that statement hit Marcus like a physical blow. The Zephyrians weren't just another species. They were one of the founding members of the council. They had been exploring the galaxy when his own ancestors were still learning to make fire. Their art, their science, their philosophy had shaped galactic civilization for millions of years, and they were dying. The Zephyrian High Collective, the governing body of their entire species, had maintained their dignity throughout the crisis. They had accepted help gracefully, worked cooperatively with other species, and faced their extinction with a calmness that most beings found either admirable or terrifying. But as the numbers continued to drop, even their legendary composure began to crack. "We have a decision to make," announced First Speaker Ethan during a council broadcast that reached every inhabited system. "Our pride has been our strength for eons beyond counting. We have always solved our own problems, faced our own challenges, carved our own path through the darkness between stars." The energy being's voice carried harmonics of sadness that made even hardened warriors weep. "But we are dying. Not in battle, not from disease, not from any enemy we can fight. We are being erased from existence itself. And all our knowledge, all our technology, all our accumulated wisdom means nothing against this threat." Marcus watched the broadcast from his ship's comm center. along with his mixed crew of humans, Aquatic Federation members, and a young crystalline engineer named Chime. Therefore, first speaker Ethan continued, "We formally request aid from all council members. We know the resources this would require. We know the dangers of trying to fight something that exists outside normal physics. We know that helping us might put other species at risk, but we ask anyway, because the alternative is the extinction of everyone and everything we have ever been." The response was immediate and heartbreaking. Species after species offered their sympathy, their support, their scientists and soldiers. But everyone's answer was essentially the same. They would help as much as they could, but they didn't have the resources or knowledge to fight something like the Null Cascade. The Draconic hegemony offered their most powerful weapons. The Cascade consumed them without slowing down. The machine consciousness provided computational power beyond imagination to search for solutions. None were found. The Hive Queens sacrificed millions of their offspring in desperate research attempts. The Cascade erased the research stations along with the researchers. Each attempt was brave, costly, and ultimately futile. The Zephyrians faced the growing certainty that they would be the first council species to go extinct. That's when the message arrived. It was transmitted on Old Council, frequencies that hadn't been used for decades. The origin point was Earth's solar system, from a source that identified itself simply as Human Command Authority. The message was brief. "We have received your request for aid. Humanity will honor its ancient oath. Preparations are beginning immediately. Hold position and await our arrival." Most council species had to look up what the message meant. The ancient oath was retrieved from the sacred archives, dusted off, and read with growing amazement. Humans had promised to give everything to prevent the extinction of any council member. But that had been 3 centuries ago. Surely it was just ceremonial language. Surely they didn't mean it literally. Dr. Zenthera contacted Marcus directly. "Captain Webb, can you explain this transmission from your people? What preparations are they referring to? What could Earth possibly do that the combined might of the Council cannot?" Marcus stared at the message for a long time before answering. He thought about human history, about the stories his grandmother had told him about the old wars, about the way humans responded when their backs were against the wall. "I don't know what they're planning," he said finally, "but I know they meant what they said. If humans promise to save your people, then they're going to save your people, even if it kills every last one of us." The Zephyrian's energy form pulsed with what might have been confusion or hope. "You speak with great certainty for something that seems impossible." Marcus smiled grimly. "You don't know humans very well yet. We specialize in impossible things, especially when we've given our word." Across the galaxy, other species were having similar conversations. Ancient beings who had seen the rise and fall of civilizations tried to understand what the young human species could possibly do that they could not. They were about to find out. The Null Cascade had no mercy and no pattern that anyone could understand. It moved through space like a living thing, seeking out Zephyrian colonies with impossible precision. What had started as 18 billion energy beings was now down to 7 billion, and the rate of loss was increasing every day. Captain Marcus Webb stood in the observation deck of Sanctuary Station, watching the latest group of refugees arrive. Thousands of Zephyrians floated in containment fields designed to protect energy-based life forms. Their light bodies dim with exhaustion and grief. Many had been fleeing for weeks, jumping from station to station ahead of the advancing cascade. "The Outer Rim colonies are completely gone," Dr. Zenthera reported, her usual musical voice flat with despair. "Harmony Nebula, the Song Gardens, the Memory Vaults, all of it. 3 billion souls erased in the past week alone." Marcus clenched his fists. He'd visited the Song Gardens once years ago. The Zephyrians had created music from stellar radiation itself, turning entire solar systems into symphonies that could be heard across light years. Now there was just empty space where those wonders had been. "Any word from the other council species?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "The same as always. They're doing everything they can, but nothing works. The machine consciousness lost another research fleet yesterday. The Cascade consumed their quantum computers before they could even begin scanning. The Draconic hegemony deployed their planet-killer weapons directly into the phenomenon. It absorbed the energy and grew larger. The situation had become desperate beyond words. The greatest minds in the galaxy had been working for months without making any progress. The Cascade operated by rules that seemed to violate everything known about physics. It consumed organized energy but left chaotic energy untouched. It could move faster than light when hunting Zephyrians, but moved slowly when encountering other matter. It seemed almost intelligent in its targeting. "It's hunting us specifically," First Speaker Ethan had announced during the last council session. "This is not a natural phenomenon. Something created this to destroy our people, though we cannot imagine what we have done to deserve such hatred." The council had mobilized resources on a scale never seen before. Entire fleets patrolled Zephyrian space. Scientists from dozens of species worked in shifts around the clock. Emergency protocols that had never been used were activated. But for all their efforts, the Zephyrians continued to die. Marcus was reviewing evacuation schedules when his comm unit chimed with an urgent message. The sender was listed as Admiral Sarah Chen Okafor, Human Emergency Response Fleet. He stared at the name for a moment. Chen Okafor. Could she be related to the ambassador who had made the original oath 3 centuries ago? The message itself was brief and confusing. "Captain Webb, your service record indicates experience with Zephyrian culture and biology. Report to coordinates 447.228.891 immediately for special assignment." This is not a request. Human Command Authority. Marcus had never heard of a human emergency response fleet. Earth's military was respectable but small compared to the major powers. They had a few dozen ships suitable for interstellar patrol. Nothing that could be called a fleet by galactic standards. But the coordinates were only 6 hours away, so he set course and tried not to think about what he might find there. What he found broke his understanding of everything he thought he knew about humanity, though coordinates led to what should have been empty space in an uncharted system. Instead, Marcus found himself looking at the largest military installation he had ever seen. Ships beyond counting filled the void, massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything in the council fleets, sleek destroyers that seemed to bend light around their hulls, and stranger vessels that hurt to look at directly. "This is Admiral Chen Okafor," came a voice over his comm. "Captain Webb, welcome to Prometheus Base. Please dock in Bay 94. We have much to discuss and very little time." The docking bay alone was larger than most space stations Marcus had visited. His ship looked like a toy among the military vessels surrounding it. Humans in unfamiliar uniforms directed him to a landing platform where Admiral Chen Okafor waited. She was a small woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much. The family resemblance to Ambassador Chen was clear, though this woman carried herself like someone who had been preparing for war her entire life. "Captain Webb," she said without preamble, "how much do you know about human military doctrine?" "The basics, I suppose. You're good fighters, but your technology is standard council-level equipment. Reliable but not advanced," the Admiral smiled grimly. "That's what we wanted everyone to think. Come with me." She led him through corridors that seemed to go on forever. They passed training facilities where humans practiced with weapons he didn't recognize, laboratories filled with equipment that definitely wasn't standard council technology, and briefing rooms where officers planned operations using star charts that included systems not on any official map. "How long has this been here?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We started building it the day after Ambassador Chen returned from making her oath to the council," the Admiral replied. 300 years of preparation, Captain. 300 years of asking ourselves one question. What would it take to save an entire species from something that could threaten even the ancient powers of the galaxy? They entered a vast chamber filled with holographic displays showing the null cascade's movement patterns. Hundreds of humans worked at stations, tracking every detail of the phenomenon's behavior. At the center of it all stood a massive tactical display that made the Council's best strategic computers look primitive. "We've been watching this situation develop for months," Admiral Chen Okafor continued. "Our xenobiology specialists have been studying Zephyrian physiology for decades. Our physicists have been working on exotic theories that most Council scientists dismissed as impossible. Our engineers have been building weapons designed to fight enemies that don't follow normal rules." Marcus stared at the display showing Zephyrian population numbers dropping in real time. "But why? Why hide all this? Why not work with the Council openly?" "Because the Council thinks in terms of politics and consensus. When a threat like this appears, they form committees and debate responses and try to find solutions that don't offend anyone." The Admiral's voice hardened. "Humans think differently. When we make a promise to protect someone, We prepare for the worst possible scenario and hope we never have to use it. A younger officer approached with a data pad. Admiral, the final calculations are complete. The cascade will reach the last Zephyrian stronghold in 72 hours. After that, the species will be functionally extinct. Then we're out of time for gradual measures, the Admiral said. She turned to Marcus. Captain, I need you to carry a message to the Zephyrian leadership. Tell them that humanity is coming, and they need to gather every survivor in the sanctuary system within 48 hours. What are you planning to do? Admiral Chen Okafor looked at the tactical display, where the null cascade continued its inexorable advance toward the last Zephyrian refuges. We're going to keep our promise, Captain. All of it. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The oath said, regardless of cost. What does that mean exactly? It means exactly what it says. We calculated the price of saving the Zephyrians 3 centuries ago. The cost is significant, but a promise is a promise. As Marcus prepared to leave, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. In the tactical display, he could see Earth's solar system highlighted in red. Around it, defensive platforms and orbital installations were powering down, their energy being redirected elsewhere. Admiral, he said slowly, you're leaving Earth undefended. She nodded. Among other things, the operation requires every resource we have, Captain. Every ship, every weapon, every person who can hold a gun or pilot a fighter. When humans go to war, we don't hold anything back. But if this doesn't work, then humanity dies keeping its word instead of living with shame. Her expression was calm, matter of fact, as if she were discussing the weather. Our ancestors made a choice 300 years ago. We've been living with the consequences ever since. Marcus left Prometheus Base with his mind reeling. As he traveled toward the sanctuary system, he tried to process what he had seen. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for 3 centuries. They had built fleets in secret, developed impossible technologies, and planned for a war against forces that most people couldn't even imagine. And they were willing to sacrifice everything, their entire civilization, to keep a promise they had made to beings they barely knew. When he delivered the Admiral's message to first speaker Ethan, the ancient Zephyrian was silent for a long time. Your people truly intend to face the cascade directly? Ethan finally asked. More than that, Marcus replied. They intend to destroy it completely, even if it costs them everything they have. But why? We are grateful for any aid, but this level of sacrifice, it makes no logical sense. Marcus thought about Admiral Chen Okafor's calm certainty, about the massive fleets hidden in secret systems, about Earth's defenses being stripped away for this single operation. Maybe not, he said, but it makes human sense. We said we'd save you, so we're going to save you. The price doesn't matter. The Zephyrian's energy form pulsed with emotions. The first sign that something had changed came from the border worlds. Automated sensor stations that had monitored empty space for decades suddenly detected massive gravitational distortions. Then the ships appeared. They emerged from hyperspace like ghosts, becoming solid, hundreds at first, then thousands. Vessels that had no business existing slipped into normal space with technologies that bent physics around themselves. The largest ships were kilometers long, bristling with weapons that council scientists couldn't identify. The smallest moved like living things, defying inertia and acceleration limits that should have been absolute. Captain Marcus. Webb watched from the observation deck of Sanctuary Station as the human emergency response fleet took position around the system. Each new arrival made the display more overwhelming. Dreadnoughts that could crack planets, carriers launching fighter craft that moved faster than light in normal space, support ships that seemed to exist partially outside normal dimensions. How many? Dr. Zenthara asked, her energy form flickering with amazement. Marcus checked the tactical display. The numbers kept climbing. Over 12,000 ships so far, and they're still coming. But Earth's entire military has maybe 50 interstellar vessels. Where did all of this come from? Before Marcus could answer, Admiral Chen Okafor's voice filled the station's comm system. This is Admiral Chen Okafor to all Zephyrian refugees. In 6 hours, humanity will engage the Null Cascade in direct combat. For your safety, please remain within the designated protective zones until the operation is complete. The Admiral's image appeared on screens throughout the station. She looked tired but determined, wearing a uniform that seemed to absorb light. Behind her, Marcus could see the bridge of her flagship, a massive vessel that hadn't been visible in the fleet manifests. Some of you may be wondering where this fleet came from, she continued. The answer is simple. 300 years ago, my ancestor made a promise on behalf of all humanity. We have been preparing to keep that promise ever since. Marcus felt his breath catch. 300 years of secret construction. 300 years of hidden research. 300 years of building weapons and training. Soldiers for a war they hoped would never come. The null cascade has consumed your people, with impunity because it operates outside the normal rules of physics, the Admiral explained. It exists in a quantum state that makes it immune to conventional weapons, but humans have never been particularly concerned with following rules. New ships continued to arrive, vessels that looked like they had been built in the deepest secret facilities humanity could construct. Some of them hurt to look at directly, as if they weren't entirely real. Others seemed to shift between different configurations as Marcus watched. "Admiral," came a voice over the comm system. "This is First Speaker Ethan. On behalf of all Zephyrians, we are grateful beyond words for your assistance. But the Cascade has proven immune to every weapon the Council possesses. What makes you believe your approach will succeed?" The Admiral's smile was sharp as a blade. "Because we've been studying your enemy for months, First Speaker. We know what it is, how it works, and most importantly, how to hurt it." Tactical displays throughout the station lit up with information that made seasoned military officers gasp. The humans had identified the Cascade's fundamental structure, mapped its movement patterns, and discovered the source of its seemingly impossible abilities. "The Cascade isn't a natural phenomenon," Admiral Chen Okafor announced. "It's a weapon, created by an extinct species called the Nullifiers who were destroyed by energy-based beings millions of years ago. They built it as their final revenge, a self-replicating hunter-killer designed to eliminate all organized energy from the universe. The revelation sent shockwaves through every Council species monitoring the situation. An ancient genocidal weapon dormant for eons had awakened and begun fulfilling its original purpose. The good news," the Admiral continued, "is that weapons can be destroyed. The bad news is that this particular weapon exists in 17 different dimensions simultaneously and is protected by quantum shields that adapt to any attack." Marcus watched as human ships began, moving into combat formations unlike anything he had seen before. Instead of traditional battle lines, they arranged themselves in complex three-dimensional patterns that seemed to follow mathematical principles rather than military doctrine. "How do you fight something like that?" Dr. Zenthara whispered. "You don't fight it," came a new voice. Admiral Chen Okafor's second-in-command had joined the conversation. "You outthink it. The Cascade adapts to attacks, but it follows predictable patterns. It's a machine, not a living being. It can be confused, misdirected, and ultimately overwhelmed." On the tactical displays, Marcus could see the human fleet's true scope. Ships arranged in formations that extended across multiple star systems. Weapons platforms that existed partially in hyperspace. Communications networks that transmitted information faster than light by using quantum entanglement. "Phase 1 begins now," Admiral Chen Okafor announced. What happened next redefined Marcus's understanding of warfare itself. The human fleet didn't attack the Cascade directly. Instead, they began firing at empty space around it. Their weapons weren't conventional energy beams or projectiles. They were reality-altering devices that changed the fundamental properties of space-time itself. Where the human weapons struck, space became unstable. Gravity wells appeared and disappeared randomly. Time moved at different speeds in different areas. The laws of physics became suggestions rather than absolute rules. The Cascade, which had been moving steadily toward the Zephyrian refugees, suddenly found itself in an environment where its normal operations became impossible. It slowed, then stopped, then began to writhe as if in pain. "Phase 2, the Admiral announced calmly. Now the human ships moved in patterns that seemed to follow music rather than military strategy. They danced around the confused Cascade, each vessel contributing to a larger symphony of destruction. Their weapons fired in perfect synchronization, creating interference patterns that existed in multiple dimensions. The Cascade began to destabilize. Its perfect black surface developed cracks that leaked raw energy into normal space. For the first time since its awakening, the ancient weapon showed signs of damage. "It's working," Dr. Zenthara breathed. "They're actually hurting it." But the Cascade wasn't helpless. As it took damage, it began to adapt its tactics. Instead of hunting individual Zephyrians, it turned its attention to the human fleet. Reality killing fields swept toward the human ships like black tsunamis. This was what Marcus had been dreading. The moment when humanity's impossible plan met the universe's harsh reality. But the human ships didn't retreat. They didn't even seem surprised. Phase 3, Admiral Chen Okafor said, and her voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. Marcus watched in horror and amazement as the human fleet began to sacrifice itself. Ships moved directly into the Cascades killing fields, not to attack, but to die in specific patterns. Each destruction created quantum resonances that interfered with the weapon's adaptive capabilities. They're using their own deaths as ammunition, Marcus realized. Hundreds of ships died in the first wave, then thousands. Each loss was precisely calculated, each sacrifice part of a larger equation that Marcus couldn't begin to understand. "Admiral," he called out over the comm, "you're losing too many ships. Pull back and regroup." "Negative, Captain," came the reply. "This is what we trained for, what we were built for." Every human in this fleet volunteered knowing they wouldn't survive. The truth hit Marcus like a physical blow. The entire human fleet was a suicide weapon. 12,000 ships and their crews, all willing to die to honor a promise made centuries before they were born. The Cascade tried to adapt to the human sacrifice strategy, but it had been designed to fight conventional enemies. It couldn't comprehend beings who used their own destruction as a tactical advantage. "Final phase," Admiral Chen Okafor announced. Her flagship was one of the few vessels still intact, though Marcus could see secondary explosions lighting up its hull. The remaining human ships gathered around the now wounded Cascade like antibodies surrounding an infection. They fired their remaining weapons not at the alien weapon, but at the space around it, creating a quantum cage that prevented it from escaping or adapting further. Then they exploded. Not from enemy fire, but deliberately. Every remaining ship in the human fleet detonated simultaneously, creating a chain reaction that existed in multiple dimensions. The explosion didn't just destroy matter, it unraveled the fundamental forces that allowed the Cascade to exist. The ancient weapon, which had survived for millions of years and consumed countless civilizations, simply ceased to be. In the aftermath, as rescue ships searched for survivors, Marcus found himself staring at empty space where 12,000 human vessels had fought and died. The only thing left was a message beacon, broadcasting Admiral Chen Okafor's final words. Oath fulfilled. Zephyrian species preserved. Humanity sends its regards to the galaxy. Remember us well. Dr. Zenthara floated beside him, her energy formed dim with shock and grief. They knew they would all die, she whispered. Every one of them knew this was a suicide mission. Marcus nodded. The silence in the Galactic Council chamber was absolute. For the first time in recorded history, every delegate, from the ancient Zephyrians to the youngest species, sat in stunned quiet as they processed what they had witnessed. Captain Marcus Webb stood at the center of the chamber, delivering his report on the Battle of Sanctuary System. His voice echoed strangely in the vast space, each word carrying the weight of revelation. 12,000 ships, he said quietly. 12,000 ships and approximately 6 million human souls, all sacrificed willingly to destroy the Null Cascade and preserve the Zephyrian species. The draconic representative, ancient scales dulled with shock, spoke first. 6 million volunteers for a suicide mission. Your species mobilized its entire hidden fleet for certain death. Not the entire fleet, Marcus corrected, and a new chill filled the chamber. According to the data Admiral Chen Okafor shared with me before the battle, this was approximately 30% of humanity's actual military capacity. The rest remains hidden across the galaxy, waiting for the next time such action becomes necessary. Several delegates made sounds of disbelief. The Aquatic Federation's representative created bubble patterns that translated roughly to impossible. The machine consciousness began transmitting data streams at frequencies that indicated severe computational stress. First speaker, Ethan floated forward. The Zephyrian's energy form brighter than it had been in months. The successful completion of the evacuation had saved nearly 4 billion Zephyrians, not their original population, but enough to ensure species survival. Honored Council, Ethan said, musical voice carrying harmonics of deep gratitude and deeper concern. We owe humanity a debt that can never be repaid. They have given us back our future at the cost of their own present. But we must also acknowledge what this victory reveals about our understanding of galactic politics. The crystalline monarchy's representative chimed in with sounds like breaking glass. Indeed, we have been conducting diplomacy with a species that could apparently destroy any of us individually, and possibly all of us combined. How long have humans possessed such capabilities? Marcus had been dreading this question. According to Admiral Chen Okafor, humanity began developing advanced military technologies the day after Ambassador Chen made her oath 3 centuries ago. They've been preparing for this scenario ever since. 300 years of secret weapons development, the Hive Queen mused, her thousands of voices creating a harmony of unease. 300 years of building fleets that dwarf our own. 300 years of pretending to be just another minor species while possessing the power to remake the galaxy. The speaker, ancient beyond measure, finally found its voice. Captain Webb, does humanity intend to use these revealed capabilities for expansion? For dominance? For revenge against species that have slighted them over the centuries? Marcus thought about the messages he'd received from Earth since the battle. Reports of human colonies celebrating the Zephyrian rescue, scientists eagerly sharing their advanced technologies with Council researchers, military commanders quietly dismantling some of their secret installations now that the immediate threat was over. No, he said firmly. Earth's government has authorized me to share humanity's official position. They built all of this to keep one promise. Now that the promise has been fulfilled, they're returning to peaceful activities. Most of the advanced fleet is being decommissioned. The weapons that violate known physics are being sealed away. Humanity never wanted to be a galactic superpower. They just wanted to be able to keep their word. But even as Marcus spoke, he could see the fear in the delegates' eyes. The fear wasn't of human aggression. It was the deeper terror that came from realizing how completely they had misunderstood the galaxy they thought they knew. The ethereal collective, beings of pure thought who rarely spoke directly, projected their concerns directly into the Chamber's translation matrix. If humanity could hide such capabilities for 3 centuries, what other species among us might possess similar secrets? Have we been conducting council business while surrounded by sleeping giants? That question sparked frantic discussion. Every species began reassessing their relationships with neighbors they thought they understood. Ancient alliances were reconsidered. Trade agreements that had seemed beneficial suddenly looked potentially dangerous. The draconic representative spoke for many when he said, "How do we trust anyone now? How do we negotiate treaties when any species might be hiding planet-killing fleets in unknown systems?" Marcus watched the council dissolve into barely controlled panic. Species that had cooperated for millennia began viewing each other with suspicion. The revelation of humanity's hidden strength hadn't just changed how they saw humans. It had shattered their confidence in their understanding of galactic civilization itself. "If I may," Marcus said, raising his voice to cut through the growing chaos. "There's something else you need to know about human nature. Something that might help you understand why you shouldn't fear us." The chamber gradually quieted, though the tension remained thick enough to cut. Humans kept their capabilities secret not because we wanted to deceive you, but because we hoped we'd never need to use them. Admiral Chen Okafor told me that every year for 3 centuries, humanity's leadership asked the same question. Could they justify maintaining such a massive military capability when the galaxy was at peace? Marcus paused, letting that sink in. Every year they concluded that the oath required them to be ready for any threat, no matter how unlikely. But they also concluded that using those capabilities for anything except fulfilling the oath would be a betrayal of everything the oath represented. Dr. Zenthara, who had been quietly observing the council session, added her voice to Marcus's explanation. "In our months of working together during the evacuation, I observed human behavior patterns extensively. When humans make a promise, it becomes a fundamental part of their identity. Breaking such a promise would be psychologically devastating to them on an individual and cultural level. The Zephyrian scientists' energy form pulsed with certainty. They built the most powerful military force in galactic history, and then spent 3 centuries hoping they'd never have to use it. When the time came to fulfill their oath, they didn't hesitate to sacrifice everything. But now that the oath is complete, they're already dismantling much of what they built." Slowly, understanding began to replace fear in some delegates' minds. The Aquatic Federation's representative created complex bubble formations that translated as, "They are bound by honor rather than ambition. This is unusual. Unusual and dangerous in different ways," the machine consciousness transmitted. A species that values promises over survival creates unpredictable variables in political calculations. The truth of that statement hung heavy in the chamber. Every species present began mentally reviewing their agreements with humanity. Trade deals, mutual defense pacts, cultural exchange programs, all of it suddenly carried new weight. The speaker finally restored order with a voice that carried the authority of eons. This council faces a choice. We can allow fear and suspicion to destroy the cooperation that has maintained galactic peace for millions of years. Or we can adapt to new realities and find ways to move forward together. The question, said the draconic representative, is whether any of us can ever feel secure again, knowing that species we considered minor powers might possess capabilities beyond our imagination. Marcus stepped forward one final time. Maybe that's not the right question. Maybe the question is, do we want to live in a galaxy where promises matter? Where oaths are kept regardless of cost? Where species will sacrifice everything to protect others? He gestured toward first speaker Ethan. The Zephyrians exist today because humans valued their word over their lives. That's terrifying in some ways, but it's also the most hopeful thing I've ever witnessed. The debate continued for days. Some species called for immediate military buildups to counter potential human capabilities. Others suggested that all species should reveal their hidden assets to restore trust. A few proposed that humanity should be expelled from the Council for the deception. But gradually, a different consensus emerged. Led by the Zephyrians and supported by species who had worked closely with humans over the centuries, the Council reached a remarkable conclusion. They would ask humanity to take on a new role in galactic civilization, not as conquerors or police, but as guarantors. When other species made solemn oaths or critical promises to each other, humanity would witness them, and if those promises were ever threatened by forces beyond normal capability to address, humanity would respond. It was a recognition that some species specialized in different aspects of civilization. The crystalline monarchy excelled at art and philosophy. The machine consciousness mastered computation and logic. The Aquatic Federation created beauty and harmony, and humans specialized in keeping impossible promises. The vote was closer than many expected, but it passed. Humanity accepted the role, though they insisted on strict limitations. They would only act when specifically requested by the threatened party. They would not interfere in normal political disputes, and they would maintain their hidden capabilities only as long as the galaxy needed such guarantees.